Indeed.
Indeed.
So, yes, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Replimat Who review. A stuttering start from two generally non-stuttering and affable nerds who are going through episodes of Deep Space Nine in chronological order from start to finish, and intermingled every other week with those, we are also going through every episode of Doctor Who in chronological order from the beginning. One of those nerds is me, Tim, and the other one of those nerds is sitting opposite me.
Me, Andy Murray.
Andy,
Get
it? It says Murray at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah.
Congratulations on all your tennis achievements, sir.
Thank you. I thought I'd just go for a minty theme.
Yeah.
You see?
Yes. All right. Never mind. So this week our Who review is Who review is usually
that thing I thought you could be Treeball Tim.
Treeball Tim. I like that. Yes. Oh, of course.
Or Tim
Marco
Treeball.
Polo. Oh,
Tim Treeball.
God's
sake. Doctor, almost.
Oh dear, that's terrible. Oh,
it's been one of those days.
Hang on.
What's bad?
I have some mints here.
He has a lot of noise.
I actually do have a Murray mince here. What I was really looking for was actually a humbug, because that's what you deserve.
I've got humbugs. I've got a whole pack of those too in the kitchen.
Exactly. Appalling.
Love me a humbug.
Gag. So anyway, I was going to say that our Replimat Who commentary is usually a commentary over the existing episodes, but this week, as we're talking about Marco Polo, it's more of a Who review, because of course Marco Polo is a missing story. We just have the soundtrack to listen to and the novelisation to read. So yes, we are talking about Marco Polo, which was written by John Le Carrotti, 7 episodes, broadcast in 1964, directed in the main by Waris Hussein, apart from episode 4, which is directed by John Crockett. I'm not sure whether Waris Hussein just decided to have a week off, or he was unwell, or something like that. It's certainly there's certainly nothing particularly different about episode 4 when you listen to it. So there we go. That is what we are talking about this week. Andy, would you like to kick off with any observations or comments or thoughts?
Well, I do have quite a few.
Oh, you do, don't you?
I thought I'd actually make some notes as I went along, because I'm like, well, it's a whole week, so I need to, But these are things that hopefully we'll touch upon. I'll start us off with saying, just as a fun fact, which I'm sure you absolutely know. This is the first chronological Doctor Who story, anyway, that is actually novelised by the scriptwriter.
Oh yes, so it is.
Fun fact. Yeah, because the closest we got with the Daleks was done by the script editor, but this is the first where the screenplay and the actual novel was written by the same dude.
Yeah,
it's interesting. In terms of
this
actual, I recall it being so, but I don't even think I own the audiobook of it yet. I should sort that out at some point, because I tend to have the audiobooks more than the novels of the actual books these days, because who has time to read them, really? It's easier to stick it on the background. This story was interesting in a general sense. I'm very much still of the opinion that 7 episodes is too long. I mean, I get why it was, because obviously they had 7 weeks to film, whatever. But for me, it sort of flags in the midsection a little bit. It gets a little repetitive and just talky, where nothing seems to be happening, really. Well, lots are happening, but nothing of consequence is happening. Just the next thing to move them along the next step of the journey. Which in itself, I can see how that would appeal to some people. And again, I think, and maybe one day we'll find this as true, be it they discover the episodes or it gets animated, that without the visuals, I think that works against it in that regard for me. Because it is quite long and it is quite, not, again, I say repetitive, not in the sense it's repeating itself, it's more a case of it's just, every episode is just, well, we'll stop here, something will happen, maybe plot relevant, maybe not, and then we'll move on to the next bit. Which, I don't know, to me is just like, okay then, next. Which when they finally settle at the destination at the end, then it's pick up.
Yes, I had that down as a positive.
That's interesting. But that's what I'm saying. It's I think visually that will make a difference then. But what I find interesting, again, we have no actual proof of this yet, but hopefully we will have one day. Is I'm interested to see how well realized all these different locations, because literally pretty much every week it's a different location. Yes. So that's like complete new sets and everything. But on audio, you get this wonderful vista in your head of them traveling from the Himalayas across China and stuff, and it's like amazing, epic, and I wonder how epic and amazing it will be if we ever get to see. I mean, animated it probably will be because they can take a few. What's the word? What's the word?
They can.
What's the word?
Take a few liberties.
Not exception. What's the word? That's the one. I don't have that A word in my head. I think I've taken advantage, but that's not right. Liberties, yeah.
Yes.
But it's definitely an episode. Even if it's just one episode, I would love them to hopefully find at least one, just so we can see it. Because the Aztecs, obviously, later down the line, the 4 episodes, so shorter, so bonus, but all the sets are there for the entire 4-week run. Whereas this one, it's new every. Which, of course, is something that Doctor Who will be doing quite a bit, and I believe coming up soon again.
The next story.
We'll be doing new sets every single week. Yeah,
yes.
Ironically. But that's my general view. I mean, I've got lots of character stuff to talk about and whatever's. But in general sense, I think it's a good story. I just think ironic, since a lot of it is quite talky and you've obviously got a lot of narration of the travels. It only existing as an audio, for me, oddly works against it, when it probably shouldn't do because of the story it's telling.
Yes, and it worked really well as an audio for me for that reason, because you've got Polo regularly saying, "Dear Diary, today, the Doctor has been rude to me, and we've travelled from Shangtu to, wherever, Lop." So it works. Obviously you lose something, but it didn't drag. It didn't drag for me at all. I found it a very engaging 7-parter, because it was essentially trying. It was doing. It didn't try to do too much, and it kind of set itself to do something in a particular new location or whatever every week, and on its journey, and the journey had to be undertaken. It had its story to tell. When it finished, then it was then it was done. I think the first thing that struck me actually was at the very beginning of that first episode. It's Doctor Who. It's the note I made was, it's the same program, but it's now subtly different. So what it did was it hammered home to me even more that sense of those first 13 episodes being one long narrative, but there is definitely a shift. So the character relationships from the Roof of the World onwards, they've settled into an amicable team. And so, again, I'm just looking at the notes I'd made. Barbara and Ian have or seem to have forgotten the Doctor's duplicitous nature. So, like they accept all the problems with the TARDIS with no hint of suspicion at all.
Yeah, I thought that
and you think
too.
actually only a couple of days ago,
as well. I was like,
this guy was, he was purposely getting you trapped on Skaro. He took you against your will away from your time. Suddenly, it's that's all happened, and presumably it needed to happen. Otherwise, Marco Polo would have been probably in a mess or a massacre, because they wouldn't have been. They had to get on in order to survive together through the journey that Marco Polo was taking them on. But I just noticed suddenly that no accusations of what have you done now, you stupid old man, blah blah blah. There was also the
I will say on the back of that, if I may.
Yeah.
I think on the back of that, I will just say, because my notes from one of the early parts is that although you're absolutely right, I spoiled all that, I thought, really? Not even slightly a bit like, wow, whoa, hang on a second, we've been here before. It did not work out well, but we still have. I mean, Ian's all very like, cool, whatever, let's go. But Barbara, I still got a sense that she's still very reluctant about the traveling, because she didn't really want to go, did she? She just sort of wanted to stay at the TARDIS, and everybody's like, no, let's go. So you still get a sense of she's not, still very much not she's not an adventurer. She's very reluctantly in this, whereas Ian's very like, yep, cool, let's do it. So although you're right, I think there's still at least some narrative flow from what we've had, a little bit, at least for Barbara, if not the rest of them.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was a shame, the one aspect of the story that annoyed me slightly was the info dump at the beginning with all of the TARDIS, with all the issues with the TARDIS. It just felt clumsy, and the fact that we've just come out of the Edge of Destruction, which is all in the TARDIS. I think if it's a shame it couldn't be planned better, so that the issues that they find that they've got with the TARDIS at the beginning of Marco Polo couldn't have been set up in the Edge of Destruction or being part of the Edge of Destruction somehow, so that the Marco Polo is essentially a continuation of that. Yes. So instead we get this, the lights have gone out, we haven't got any water, the heating's gone off, and we haven't got any water. And it's just, I just thought that was
weird, isn't
clumsily done.
No water.
None of that doesn't really make sense. But I just thought it's a shame that it would have given it more of an organic flow if they'd managed to factor those particular problems into the Edge of Destruction somehow. And the other kind of key aspect for me that affects the series as a whole, I suppose, is the way that here it's integral to the story that the interior and the exterior of the TARDIS are not separate dimensions, or although it's been said kind of roughly in the first episode that they are. But the danger here is that inside the TARDIS, the crew aren't safe from the external issues like the extreme cold. They can't just go back in and just spend the night in the TARDIS and be comfortable in the dark with some torches or something like that. It's we've got nowhere to go. We need to light a fire. We're going to freeze. And it happens again a few episodes later when you get the condensation thing. Because there's no way that condensation shouldn't fall on the inside of the TARDIS. if the inside of the TARDIS is in a different dimension to the exterior. And so, but of course, that has to happen for narrative reasons as well. So, so the TARDIS is basically in a different dimension, and there, the whole time reacting to the exterior.
Speaking of different dimensions,
yes.
Yeah, speaking of different dimension, dear listeners and viewers, we seem to be having a bit of a sound delay going on. I can tell. So I'm trying to talk. Tim's like talking, and then a few seconds later he's like, "Oh, no, too late now. Carry on." Right. So
yes.
We are definitely going to be having some fun some verbal crossing overs here on this one. I think where Tim's talking, but it sounds to me like he stopped, and then suddenly I talk, and Tim's like, "Oh, what? No." So pretty standard for us, really. Let's be fair. Yeah,
I've definitely stopped talking now.
You did stop that time, yeah.
Yeah.
I can just see it happen. I'm like, but no, you can't hear me. I know you heard me, but it's too late now. Okay, right, fine.
So right, well, I've waffled for a bit. So you have the floor again.
I'm just looking at my notes here, because we don't do scene by scene or nonsense like that.
Yeah, no, my notes aren't in chronological order. They were just as things occurred to me as I was making notes, basically.
Yeah. Same. Yeah, I was going to say actually, what you're talking about, the TARDIS and the way it's treated in this story, that externally and internally apparently are so connected that the outside elements will affect them inside. Whereas, of course, previously it seemed to be suggesting otherwise. I think that inconsistency between this and, say, Unearthly Child is pretty consistent with what goes on later with the TARDIS, because as we will relearn, we know anyway, but it's pretty inconsistent how different writers handle the interior and exterior, how it relates to each other. So, it's good that they're doing it from the off. Another little thing that I noticed about the TARDIS, specifically, since we're on about that, is a few times, first it was Barbara, then it was the Doctor, then it's Marco Polo later. 3 of them at separate occasions called the TARDIS TARDIS. Not the TARDIS, just TARDIS.
Yes, TARDIS.
I was like, ooh, that's very early novelization. Because, of course, in the first original novelizations, it was always called TARDIS, lower. That too, yeah, not the, it was just TARDIS.
TARDIS.
And I thought, it's all this. I kind of like it. I think it works better that eventually the name becomes proper noun, so you stop using the definitive article. But it's odd that when you hear somebody just say, "Oh, but we can't leave TARDIS," or whatever, you're like, that don't sound right to me anymore. It's an odd thing. It's just like, ooh, what? Yeah. It's noticeable.
It drags you out of the moment.
After 60 years, it's noticeable, yeah. But I thought that's quite interesting. I quite like that. I'll also say I've liked, and again, consistently with what we've had thus far, and we'll have again for sure, is that both Ian and Barbara, their backgrounds come into play quite a lot throughout the story in terms of their teaching background. We get a lot of Barbara's historical knowledge being brought forward in a relevant way. And indeed, Ian's, when, for instance, he's trying to explain about the condensation and stuff later, and they're trying to explain, what is it? They was also trying to explain, they're trying to explain the whole mountain sickness thing about doctors not. Oops, Tim's disappeared, but I'm sure he'll be back in a minute. So I'll just pause those thoughts, and obviously, viewer, I may cut this bit, or I may just carry on. But Tim has vanished. He will return, I assume. It's a Saturday thing. Connection, we have these issues. See, technology, as good as it is still not great. One day, maybe, eventually. Let's see where he is. Go on Facebook. Facebook. There we go. Is Facebook actually working now? Because it didn't work for me earlier. This is my internet. No. Where'd he go? Sure, I'll get a message from him in a second saying, "Oh no, I finished." Facebook really didn't know that. What if my connection is shit today as well?
Hello, can you hear me?
Here he is. Hello.
I'm back. Apologies. Yeah, my internet had just sudden meltdown.
At a
So
moment.
sorry about that. It
That's
did.
okay.
And
it
I
happens.
need to get my
mine seems
notes
to be
back
not
up.
going as perfect either. Yeah, my internet don't seem to be at its best either because I can't seem to load Facebook at all. Or maybe Facebook's having issues, which could not unusual. But yes,
just sign into my emails. So you were talking.
I was.
I can't remember what you were saying now.
I remember that.
It was only a minute ago.
I was talking about Ian and Barbara's background, teaching. Did you get any of that bit?
No, I didn't. But that's
okay. Well, basically, what I was saying.
Yep.
Yeah. What I was saying is that I like that, and this will of course happen much more later as well. That Barbara gets to use her historical knowledge quite a lot in this story. She's obviously very aware of whatever.
Yes.
And Ian gets to use his science knowledge a lot as well, like with explaining condensation to explaining later on about what coal is, not burning rock. And of course, explaining early on about mountain sickness to him, how it's actually it's all to do with altitude and stuff. It's not a magical thing. And I thought that was quite fun, that they got a few conversations of the science of what's going on as opposed to the whole magical nature from Marco Polo's point of view, because obviously he doesn't understand these things. But yeah, I like that. I thought that's kind of fun. I like it.
I'd made a similar note about the show. It's the best example so far of the show following its early, its sort of mission to educate the viewer, as well as tell a story. So there was one bit I thought was a little clumsy when. Because it's not just Ian and Barbara sort of showing their scientific and their historical knowledge, although Barbara gets a few things not wrong, but they offer forward information that Polo then will correct. So when Barbara says China and he says, "Oh no, I don't know anything about this China. We're travelling through Cathay," and stuff like that. There's one moment in I think it's episode 3.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, when after Ping Cho's delightful little story, and Ian says to Susan, "Oh, we still use the name Hashashin today," meaning 1964, of course.
I've got a good note about that.
And also,
I've got a great note about that one.
It's also still treating Susan like a 15-year-old, teenager.
Yes.
So it's almost like it's being presented to you. Then
one, I do think that's the whole talk about the hashish and the hashishisms and whatevers. you would not have that conversation in Modern Who. Not so much the origin of the word assassin, but just talk about hashish, which is, very, it's green, it's marijuana, marijuana.
So cool,
marijuana,
because
it's
spent all day getting stoned in a temple.
Because, it's such a prevalent drug at the moment, and obviously it's always in the news, especially in America, and quite a bit over here. It's just like, I was like, as soon as they started talking about hashish, and I was like, assassin. And of course, then they did the whole bit about explaining it all. I'm like, I wondered if he was going to go any further with this mention of it, but my God, they made the whole scene about it. I was like, you wouldn't do that today. Not in Doctor Who. I mean, in Torchwood and shit like that, but in Doctor Who, no. A second point about what you were just saying in regards to Susan. Although in that particular scene they were still treating her as actually 15, and she does say this later in show that she's 15, doesn't she? I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
And she certainly, her and Ping Cho are very much of a similar age, which confirms that she must be very young for a Gallifreyan. Beyond that, I think Susan is really written well in this episode, in this story rather. A few odd moments.
Yeah.
Like, her reaction at the end of season 3, where she's all screamy because of the eyes in the cave or whatever it was. But especially her relationship with Ping Cho and the conversations they have, like they have this conversation later down the line about Susan missing her home, which is the first time we've had that kind of conversation since the first episode of the series.
Yes.
Well, we've had the Doctor talk about being exiled and that, but it's the first time you get a sense of how it's affected Susan. But I think, Susan, I mean, all the regulars were written very well here, but Susan, it stands out because already at this point, they've sort of stopped writing her as an intelligent character. So it's nice that in this story, and possibly the last time actually, you get a sense of her as an actual character.
Yeah.
And, that's going to be a very rare thing.
Yes, this is true. It's a really good story for Susan. I mean, it's all of the companions have a good, or rather, all of the crew have a good chunk of the story. But it's but what also helps, I think, is that the burden of the storytelling and the kind of the audience focus is shared this time with Marco Polo as well. Even though he's he's a character that kind of veers. He's not always supportive of them. He's not always friendly with them. But it's it's still, he takes a lot of the burden of the storytelling on himself, which makes things slightly easier, I think, for the regulars.
I wonder. Let me wonder. I wonder if I'm wondering away if that would have been so had the original plan been executed. Because I was just reading up on TARDIS Wiki before we started that the original plan, but obviously by the time they got to the scripting stage, they changed their minds. The narration side of it was apparently going to be shared between Ian and Barbara in particular. I think the Doctor possibly, certainly Ian and Barbara.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it's only a later stage of the script, and they decided to make it Marco Polo's diaries.
Makes sense.
And I wonder if they had done it the way they originally intended. Oh, I mean, absolutely does. But I wonder if it had been Ian and Barbara, because it would have been atypical of the show, because we don't see that again or before, unless they carried it through, which would have been perfectly fine then. But it would have stood out if it was just a story. But I wonder if they had gone that direction, then would Marco Polo's presence and importance and narrative impetus, and the fact that, like you said, he feels like such a huge part of the story as much as they do, if that would have been taken away without him being the narrator.
Yes, I think it would. Yeah, his presence would have been diminished. So he would have felt more like a guest actor or guest character in his own story, as it were. Whereas the way they've done it, it's still maintained. It's still Marco Polo's story. The TARDIS crew are guest characters in Marco Polo's story.
Yeah.
This way, which I think is right as it should be. So yeah, no, that's a good point. I wasn't aware of that, of them considering changing the
I had no idea
narrators.
Until I read it on. Yeah, until I read it on TARDIS Wiki about half hour ago, I had no idea.
I'm inclined to think if they did that then, they would have
I'm assuming it's legit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird.
This is it. That's what I think. It's a case of if they did that, then it wouldn't have worked if it was just a one-off. It would have looked like us out of place now.
I've just seen just another note relating to what we were talking about before about the show being kind of sort of educating. So you got that odd moment where, like Ian says, we still use the name hasheshing today, meaning talking as if it's 1964, sort of oddly kind of taking things out of the moment, as it were, of the time. Also, that issue, the issue about Pincho's marriage, which does sound wrong, but it's Susan and Barbara are quite vociferous about it, and it's very much it's very much a 60s view of what they consider to be an outdated or outmodish way of going about marriages. I know, that's still obviously the case now. I think, I think the problem with it is that they often know kind of justification other than why would you want to marry someone who's old enough to be your grandfather. They often know there's no contextualizing. There's no real discussion about it. It's just that's wrong from our perspective. That's wrong. So it's a clash of it's a clash of sort of viewpoints and ideologies.
Well, it's interesting,
but it's not very well done. I think they could have done it better. Because
I think it's interesting because in the 60s, so it's wrong, it's all this, but obviously arranged marriages still happen. And in today's society, today's world rather, we're much more aware of other cultures and the fact that it's not something that we culturally do, but other cultures in the world still do it, and that's perfectly fine because that's what they do. Whereas, of course, in the 60s, and I think it fits that Ian and Barbara, being a product of their time in the UK, despite their scientific knowledge and their historical knowledge and all this stuff, they're still very much British people in 1960s UK.
Yes.
And their understanding and acceptance, I suppose, of cultures outside the UK in the 60s wouldn't have been that wide.
This is how we do things. This is how we do things in Britain, and we do things properly in Britain.
We get it today.
Yeah.
Because they're not exposed to the other cultures that we get. So I think it makes sense. I think
there could have been a bit more of
it fits, personally,
a bit more of a discussion, a bit more of a bit more of a discussion about why that was happening, and again, it would have been helped to inform the audience a little more as well. So there's that. My next note, of course, is
wondered. I can't remember.
Go on.
Just before you go on to your next note, do we learn why Pinchot's getting into arranged marriage, or I can't remember if there was an actual reason, or was it just simply because that's how it was? We were told
that it was arranged. It was arranged by her father, and it had been sanctioned by the Khan, and her prospective husband was a very important member of the Khan's court or something.
So it's some status thing for a family.
It is basically, yes. It will raise her status and her family's status. Also, you don't go against what the Khan wants, unless you want to lose your head.
Because it's interesting because obviously it's mentioned a little here and there, but it's not like a through story throughout the entire story. It's every now and then you get reminded of it, like you get a couple of episodes where it's not even mentioned. So yeah, maybe introducing that element, they could have done more with it throughout the story. You know, because they do. I mean, especially considering how much time Ping Cho and Susan spent together, they could have been. And I do think, I mean, maybe this is a failure on the writer's part. Maybe Susan should have been a bit more accepting of the idea. Because supposedly she's been to metal skies of Venus or Caesar's Venus and all this kind of stuff. They've travelled a bit clearly in between leaving their home and an earthly child. So maybe just to offer a slightly different perspective to it all, to Ian and Barbara, maybe Susan could have been a bit more accepting of it. Or the doctor could have been saying, like, you know, different culture, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't recall any of that at all.
No, it's all just, no, that's not right at all. We can't be having any of that.
Yeah.
So in amongst Susan's hip 60s dialogue. So, my next note was that at 7 episodes, the story doesn't have any lulls because each episode is crafted around one particular main set or piece of action. So, which of course flies in the face of what you were saying before. So,
which is funny because my note at this point, now that as we're going, because I'm ticking off my notes as we're doing them.
Yes.
So my next note is literally episode 4 and 5 drag a bit from me. At this point, it's feeling repetitive and stretched out. Again, 7 parts are too many. So we both reached a point in the story, as it turns out, where you're like, oh, this is really working well. Whereas I'm like, can we crack on a bit, please?
I'll tell you what, one of the things I was thinking of was...
It's interesting how...
When we watched the Daleks, I started to feel that there was some kind of lulls when the Thals were introduced, and we got those long scenes of just the Thals talking to each other, because I didn't feel engaged with their struggle or their conversation at all. Whereas the Daleks were far more interesting. Here, I didn't feel that we ever had any situations where we were having scenes that didn't involve the regular characters, and if they didn't, they involved Marco Polo instead. Right. So he's we still feel that we're part of the action because we're experiencing the story through his eyes a lot as well. And I didn't feel that we had any of those lulls. There were obviously a lot of talky scenes, and like you said, it could be that the visuals, that it could be that we find the audio far more engaging because we don't have creaky visuals to distract us.
I know Tim's saying something, but I can't hear him now.
But I'm just carrying on walking. I'm carrying on waffling on. So that's that's cool. Well, I didn't feel we had any of those kind of thought moments here.
I can hear you again now.
You can hear me again now. Okay, good. So there was always something interesting going on, because just little things like the TARDIS crew and the audience can all see that Tigana is a villain, for example, right from the off, pretty much. We all, he's. It's clear that he's a villain, but the story, the script is very careful that it gives Marco Polo justification for believing Tigana to be good until the final moment when he walks in and finds that he's there with his sword at the Khan's throat or whatever, and Marco Polo's suddenly like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Oh, they were right all along.
Now I get it.
Yeah. Oh,
I did find
have the TARDIS key.
I did find Marco Polo. Yeah, I did find Polo mostly consistent, but also changeable a lot. I
Right.
thought he's quite stubborn and selfish in his objectives. He was very unwilling. Like, no, I need your caravan. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
No matter how much Ian tried to persuade him otherwise, and they did try so many times, and he was just even like, in episode 5 or whatever it was, 6 probably, when Ian's finally explaining why they need a TARDIS. It's no point us going to Venice or wherever. We need because we come from the future. Blah 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 blah. And and despite all that, although you can hear Marco Polo's kind of like, okay, kind of makes sense, but I don't believe you because I can't see it, so I don't believe you. Still, his stubbornness is, I need it so I can be free and carry on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You just have to suffer as a result of it.
But also the TARDIS
speaking
crew,
of, since we're near episode 5,
go on. I was going to say the TARDIS crew don't help themselves at all, because and this is another way that the story works really well, because they lie, and they try to lie. They lie to try to fool Marco Polo or whatever, and that just that backfires on them so often. Particularly the scene that you've just talked about there. When he says, "How can I possibly believe you?"
That was the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, and
because
so
it's not
I thought that was incredibly well done.
Yeah, but I did like the end of that scene where Ian says to him, like, "Would you, if you did believe me, would you give me the key?" And he's like, "If I believe what you said, then yes, I would." But I'm, as a viewer / listener, I'm like, would you though?
Well, he does. That's why he does. That's why he hands it over immediately at the end.
Focused on what you want.
Yeah, but at the very end,
I suppose
he says,
maybe ultimately
did. Yeah, here you go. It's not even you were right all along. I'm really sorry. Here, have the key.
Isn't it by that point he's got his freedom anyway? So now he's like, that's fine. I got what I want anyway, so go for it.
No, I don't think he has. No, in fact,
or mishearing?
He's all he's got is the Khan's displeasure. I think at that point he's got to try and he's
actually because it's literally that last scene, isn't it, where the Khan says, "Just fine, you're free." Yeah,
and it is just the very end. So you were saying you were going to say about episode 5.
Skipping back just a wee bit. Yeah, I was skip back just a wee bit. At the end of episode 5, right? Say a wee bit. It's quite a bit back. 2 episodes back. We've had this discussion a little bit before about the Daleks and stuff. I believe it was in
when they can't
where they basically get the TARDIS back after stealing the key or being choked. Yeah, and I'm like, I wonder, because again we're at the stage where every episode has its own title. I wonder if the viewers, they got the TARDIS, they got the key back off, well, Pinchot's given them the key and whatever. If people actually believe, oh, we're at the end. Or were people thinking, well, hang on a minute, nothing's been solved yet? They've got the TARDIS, but nothing's been solved. Is that really going to be the end of the story? Obviously we know it's not going to be because we know it's 7 episodes. But I wonder if back then there were many of the youngsters certainly thought, right, next journey, next adventure. I wonder. There's a lot of wondering on this episode.
Anyone who was sort of, I think, older and following it in more detail, I think would have felt very shortchanged if the story had ended there, because
nothing's resolved.
It's absolutely nothing. And okay, you could argue, well, that they're just dipping into history, so they just joined Marco Polo's caravan for a bit, and then they managed to get away again. But just the way
life does go on.
But you need some kind of narrative closure to it, because you need Tagana to get his have his comeuppance or whatever. You want Polo, despite everything. You really do want Polo to get his freedom, even though, as Barbara tells him right at the beginning, oh well, you do get back to Venice in whenever it was 1284 or something. So yeah.
And in fairness, he's got no reason to believe her, has he?
Exactly.
Yeah, all right then.
Yeah.
What do you fucking know? Who are you? Strange woman in the weird clothes.
So what have we got? Lies.
Okay, let's go back to episode 7 then.
Yes.
My next note is about episode 7, which is, or actually a little bit before that. Was it 7 or 6 when they arrive at Kublai Khan's?
6.
I think it was 6 initially.
Yes.
It might be
and
naturally
the comedy increases.
6, okay, where the Doctor and Kublai Khan hit it off straight away, and you got Susan mocking them, 2 old people waddling off together and stuff. And I don't know, I'm listening, I'm thinking, again, I wonder how it's done visually, because I think missing the visuals working against it for me here, where Susan comes across as being quite mean and spiteful, laughing at them. But without the visual, it's hard to gauge if what she's actually responded to is actually kind of funny, or if she's just coming across as being a bit mean-spirited.
Yeah.
But it's hard to gauge for me.
It is. I mean, I'd made a note that the comedy aspects of the story rose considerably once the Khan was introduced, which is,
I mean, I do like
probably a good thing, because otherwise, although he says, Kublai Khan says he's the administrator, and his grandfather Genghis was the kind of the general, and the who did all the killing and stuff. But yes, I suppose introducing a bit of comedy there just distracts the audience slightly from takes away the edge of what is essentially a regime based on terror largely.
Yes, terror, terror.
You got the old Khan. You've got his comedy wife, who's probably a horrendous 1960s battle axe.
Oh God, you imagine. Talking of the comedy of it, I do quite like that
Wang Lo,
Khan and the Doctor just basically who?
I thought you might be talking about Wang Lo. He's he's the way station guy.
He's this year.
He's the way station guy. He's very much comes across on audio as a very much like a comedy caricature. I can't imagine that he'd look quite as probably wouldn't look quite as good as he sounds these days with
probably
casting and stuff.
No, I was going to say what I quite like is the whole backgammon thing. I think that's quite fun, that they just sit down and the Doctor's like, well, we shall win it. I shall win my TARDIS back by actually playing a game. And I'm like, I kind of like, I mean, he loses it, but, I like the fact that, it seems 2 old men. It's like, you know what? Well, let's just sit down and do this like reasonable men. We'll play a game. Winner takes all. Okay, that seems fair. Let's do that. I quite like that. Indeed, that's give me a nice little side note.
The Khan also says at the end he probably would have won the TARDIS back anyway if Polo hadn't given him the key. So
I think he's just being modest, because the Doctor lost quite. Because the Doctor's all like, "Yes, I've won all this and this and this." Next scene, I lost it all.
Yeah.
So I don't think he would have won it back. I'm like, well, I don't know. I think the Khan played you, frankly. He's like, yeah, you think you got it? Nope, one move, boom, it's all mine again. So you clearly didn't actually win. I don't think you would have done. There is one little side note, which is kind of connected to a general sense of the story as well. Where I've got that the sacred tooth of the Buddha is mentioned. It certainly reminded me, I came across that in my research when I was writing The Secrets of Dead Zen.
Okay.
And how I was going to use that in the story, but either I couldn't find a place for it or I forgot. Because now I'm thinking about it, it's like I must have forgotten, because he could easily have just given it to Odiana. Have you listened to Secrets of Death, Sen?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I shan't give it away, but there's a scene in it where he meets one of these pilgrims. It's okay. And I'm like, just giving that guy that tooth of the Buddha would have been everything that would have moved the plot along. And so I must have just forgot about it. But in a general sense of this, I think I think this was a choice at the time, but I think I forgot I made this choice. But listen to this. It actually reminds me of a lot of Secrets of Death Zen. In the whole, it's quite a what's the word that John Donner used? It's a bugger. Words fail me today. It's a nice casual journey. There's no rush to get where we're going.
Yes,
pastoral. That's it. Pastoral.
Pastoral. Okay, yeah.
And yeah, I definitely got a sense. Yeah, I think I definitely got a sense of what listening to this one like. Oh, there's a lot of Secrets of Death Zen here. I can't remember if it was intentional on my part or not. But yeah,
it was nice. I felt that the pace of the action suited the pace of the story, as it were. So it was trotting along at a pleasant pace. There were there was interesting action going on. There was a few fraught dramatic moments here and there. More, I say more. I'm not sure we've had any yet, but a potential kind of sexual aggressive, or Barbara finding herself in a potentially sort of sexually aggressive situation. That I think gets repeated a few times. It's not really highlighted in that way, but it's very much there. The mature woman finding herself trapped with men aggressive men in that kind of situation.
You about to vanish again. Then you just stopped.
Oh, I do apologise.
Listen, because either he's talking or he's gone about to vanish. But you're still here.
So
you just never know. You just never know.
We won't know what's going on until you watch it all back and just hope it's all been recorded. So, but I mean,
we're not even joking.
I'd made a note that there was a real sense that Ian, Barbara, and Susan in particular were enjoying the trip, despite the threats and the concerns and all of that. There does seem to be it's kind of like it's an opportunity for them to relax after what they've been through the last week at most, probably while since they left the junkyard at Totter's Lane. So that's all good.
I think they were kind of like that by that point in the story. I think they've got to the point where, like, well, the doctor's doing his thing. He'll get the TARDIS back somehow. He's obviously working on it. So let's just chill a bit.
It's going to take him a week to rebuild the circuit and repair the TARDIS. I mean, that's
impressive, bit, considering the lack of anything there.
Yeah. So we've got Tigana was very good at covering up after himself.
My last note is basically about the end.
Go on.
No, so my last note's about the end. So if you've got anything prior to the end, now is the time.
As said, I thought Pinchot was wonderful. A charming character. Tigana was a great villain because he's very good at covering up after himself, and also very intelligent. So he preempted what he thought would be potential criticisms from the TARDIS crew. Almost every time he gets to Marco Polo first and says, "Look, I think they might try and do this," and so they come in and they go, "Oh God, yeah, I think Tigana's a real bad egg." And Tigana's already warned me we're going to say this, and just so that all worked.
Yeah, I was ready for you.
Well. I'd made a note that it's probably best that we can't see some of the larger than life caricatures like Wang Lo at the way station, and the guy with the eye patch and the monkey on his shoulder and stuff. Because
now that you've mentioned that, because we did discuss whether we'll mention this or not. It seems a good time to us any to wonder. Obviously, you can't ignore the fact that this was made in '64, and ethnic actors were, especially actors who could do the job, were hard to come by. Okay as extras, but unfortunately, there just weren't enough strong ones to lead the show. And I think you have to be mindful of that. I think it's disingenuous now to say, oh no, they should have done better, blah 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 blah. It's like you've got to accept this is what it was, Because
and celebrate the fact that things have moved on. So we're in a position where if Marco Polo was made now, that they would. Certainly celebrate the fact that they would be able to find sufficient actors of stature or of experience who could take on those roles. But yes, it was. That's that's the way it was done at the time. There's no real value in where you historicize it by saying that this is how it was done. Criticizing the show for it is, I don't know. It's a kind of a double-edged sword, because you don't really achieve anything by criticizing it. You're criticizing the way that the productions were made at that time, but I don't. The fact that things are different now should it should be the thing to celebrate, I suppose. And if Marco Polo was animated, I assume that they would do what they did with the Abominable Snowmen, for example, and they would cast the characters with the correct ethnicity, which would
I'm very much in two minds.
Oh, really?
I'm very much in two minds because obviously, I've watched Abominable Snowmen, obviously, and I can see why they thought, okay, now we've animated it, let's make them more true to what it should have been historically. But the other half of me thinks, yes, but you are recreating a part of TV history here, not real world history. Yes. So I don't know. I don't know if that was the right decision to make. I think it's again missing the point of the show that was being made at the time. I don't know. So again, I wonder if with Marco Polo, when they do get around to it, I don't know. I mean, I can't say I've seen much response to it either way, so I don't know what the general consensus is. But in my mind, I'm like, I can see the argument on both sides of this, and I'm not sure where I land.
Yeah, I think I've only seen comments from fans who are adamant that the animations should replicate as closely as possible what was originally made for television. And that's kind of I think that's how I was originally as well. We'll get there not too distant future. Reign of Terror, for example, the animated episodes of the Reign of Terror. I thought they were dreadful because there's all this cutting and all this fancy lighting going on. It almost gave me motion sickness watching it.
Oh my god, so much bloody cutting.
It's ridiculous.
That doesn't fit the episode at all now, because the episodes were not filmed like that.
Yeah, and and the two episodes of the Moon Base I think are magnificent. I love them. Just like I was not originally, I was not sure that I wanted to watch animations in colour of black and white stories in colour, because I thought, well, they were made in black and white. I've kind of been won over slightly just for the fact that Evil of the Daleks and the Abominable Snowman I just think are magnificent. I absolutely adore both of them.
See, when it comes to color versus black and white for animations, what I tend to do is if I just bought them and I'm not on some marathon, then I'll watch them in the best presented way, which is color, because that's how they're made to be seen as an animation.
Yeah.
But like with this case, once we get to the animations in the run, I'll watch black and white so it better fits what's around it.
Fair enough.
That's generally how I tend to go with them.
Yeah. So, but yes,
in regards to what you're saying about accepting.
Yeah, recasting the actors in regards to didn't bother me.
Just in regards to that it doesn't bother me, but that's it. But then again, I'm very much I get the point of view of it should be as accurate as possible to the TV show it's supposed to be representing. But I have no issue with the liberties they took on the Macroterra, for instance. So.
Right. Yes, that's a very good one. I mean, I'm not massively sold on the Macroterra at all. I'm not sure that I don't think the story is particularly brilliant in the first place. But I didn't see the point in animating something that was going to look pretty crap. Just kind of like moving a few claws.
Macro looking huge in that.
Yeah,
superb.
Whereas
it
makes much more sense to give it the kind of presence and the kind of movement that that
they wanted.
Innes Lloyd would have just loved to have got in the first place. So they would have fallen over themselves to have got something that could do more than sit there, beam a little bit, and then do that with its claws.
The only thing about Macroterra I disliked. And we seem to be in an animation discussion now, so
yes,
we'll get to this again a few times. We'll probably get to this. So there's quite a lot of animation coming up soon. Is that they cut the whole thing about the bit where they go for haircuts and all this,
the rumble
new clothes and everything. And the doctor's like, you can see your face in your shoes. Yeah.
Who wants to see their face in suede shoes?
It's a shame they cut that because, of course, Polly starts with a short hair. She starts with a short hair, so you lose the whole point of why you got short hair later. But that's not a major thing yet.
No.
But yeah. So should we talk about the end of the episode of the story then?
Yeah. So just what else have I got? Kublai Khan comedy. Yeah. Yeah. I made a note that Polo is very much a man of his word because as soon as he sees that Tigana has been lying,
making visual signals so I can let
he gives the doctor back his key. So that's that was very much it shows that Polo very much was a man of his word. Even though he was obviously out for his own ends to a certain extent as well. But that was it. And then I just
my note on the ending.
So yeah, that's all my notes done.
Okay, my note about the ending is my note about the ending is a bit weak. I thought the whole that is violence is what solved the story at the end of the day. Was a bit like, I wish watching it. I think it would have played better had the Doctors they finished the backgammon game again. I'd played another game and the Doctor won it back because I think that would have been a nice wrap up for it than just giving the key because he's dead now, so here's the key. I don't know. It just feels like a bit of a cheat ending. I don't know. But the non-cliffhanger bit, I noticed that it's the first time in 13 plus 7, 20 episodes. Hey, maths. I can do maths. That we've had no cliffhanger that leads into the next story.
Yes.
Which is, at this point, very unusual. I can't remember if they still got the same clothes in the next episode. I think they probably have, but it might be the first legit gap.
It might be, yes. I've seen images. I remember seeing images of Ian in a kind of a Chinese gown or dressing gown type thing.
Yes,
I can't remember whether that's
sense.
from
He's
the
wearing
beginning
that.
of the Keys of Marinus or not. So
Yes.
we'll yeah,
Yes, I think
we
he is
shall
wearing
we shall find out. We shall
But
find
yeah,
out.
so yeah, final thoughts then. For me, I liked it. I didn't dislike it. I liked, in retrospect, it wasn't in a rush to tell its story. I was just happy to
Yeah.
just, fill its 7 episodes. But I still think it's a little weak in the middle. But that might change if we get an animation, which is most likely, or if in the most unlikely scenario, we actually end up finding the entire, I say we, somebody finds all
Yes.
7 episodes. I think then that would change, for me, the middle section of the story. But I liked it. I like what they did with the characters. I think they were all very well written. I think Susan's written at her best here since the first episode. And I suspect her best until she comes back in New Who, if she ever does, frankly. But yeah,
you've gone
it's
silent.
enjoyable.
Oh no!
It's a shame.
I need closure on that. Best until. I'm hoping he's going to say the censorites. I suspect he probably is saying the censorites. If you can hear me, dear viewer, listener. I suppose I should keep on talking. Really. Oh, you're there.
I'm here. I was waiting for you to talk, but you weren't talking. I assumed you were talking, so I just let you carry on.
I was waffling away because for me, you cut out. You said the best written until, and then you cut out. I didn't have closure on it. I assumed you were going to say the censorites, but but I don't know.
No, I said best. No, I said it was the best Susan's probably ever going to be written going forward. Anyway, certainly from what I know, until she maybe eventually returns to New Who, because then she'll probably be written really well.
Oh dear. Fair enough. Right.
Who knows?
Who knows?
If what are your final thoughts then?
My final thought, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lovely, just a lovely, gentle 7-part story with just some genuinely dramatic moments, and just listening to it one episode at a time. Not even, sometimes I'd maybe listen to one over breakfast in the morning and maybe listen to another one over lunch or something. So I didn't always leave a full day between them, but just picking them up one at a time. It was just a lovely journey. And I've enjoyed the story before. And yeah, it was lovely to revisit that, and it's a story I would love to see, but also it's a story that I think works really well on audio. If that's all we get, so much so that when I tried to watch the recons, I found it too distracting, and I just went back to listening to them instead. So I really enjoyed it, and it's
I started watching episode 2, and I was like, nah.
Just looking forward to where they go next. Which could be Marinus, or it could be somewhere completely different, depending on whether there is a legitimate gap in the narrative or not. So, and if it is, it'll be filled by a virgin.
I got a feeling that big finish, more big finish.
Yes.
I feel sure that Ian has got his Chinese top on in beginning of Keys of Marinus. I can see it.
Fair enough.
So, but we'll see where the episode begins, because it could just be that he had on for quite a while. So that was Marco Polo.
That was Marco Polo. Yes, indeed.
Tim, what's next week?
Next week we're back to DS9 next week, and it's the first of a 2-parter, isn't it? It's the Marquis.
Check you out with knowledge.
Yeah, well, I saw it when it came up on Netflix. It was I noticed it was a two-parter, and I thought
I
know the name
this little
Marquis from Voyager, and not a large tent in a back garden. So.
There's another person who's reacting to DS9. I've stopped watching it now because he's ahead of us and it's sort of spoiling what we're doing a little bit for me.
Right.
But I got as far as him doing the Marquis, and when he was talking about the next episode, we've got a new two-parter called the Marquise. I'm like, oh, poor guy.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it took him a long way. It took him a long time to realise what it was actually called. Even though they kept mentioning it in the episode, he still took him a while to get used to saying it. Because he's young, and I'm guessing he's never heard of the Marquis. Yeah, he's Canadian, so he probably should have heard of the Marquis, I reckon.
Yes.
Yes.
Fair enough. So yes, that'll be that'll be for us next week. Are we just going to do them one episode at a time, as we have up until now?
Yeah. We'll keep going with one episode. Cool. What's it? Because I think that takes us enough. That fills our time slot nicely.
Okay, indeed.
Plus, the DS9 cliffhanger. Yes. We haven't had one of those for a while, have we?
Mm-hmm. Right. So there we go. That was Marco Polo. We've got the Marquis, not Marquis Polo. We've got to look forward to next week. Courtesy of DS9. It's going to be an intense episode, that one, I think. So until then, I've been Tim. He's been... Who have you been?
I have been Andy.
Has been Andy on and off.
I've been Andy.
As we've been cutting in and out with each other's
Andy
dreadful
Murray.
Internet connection.
Yep.
Andy Murray, who's been mint for us today. I've been... what was I?
Mint.
Treebor Tim?
Pucker. You're Tim Treebor, not the third Doctor. Don't get confused.
Yeah. Madam, what year is this?
Yeah.
Yes, and so we've been the Replimat. You can find us free everywhere, in all the usual places.
Everywhere that we're.
You can find us loitering for free in all the usual places. You can interact with us on social media too, and tell us what you thought. Tell us if you like us or dislike us, preferably like us. But
please tell us.
Yeah, please do try to interact. And the necessary information will be available in the comments below the video, down there. That's it. What about on Spotify?
I just dropped my ring.
You dropped your ring. Oh, well.
I dropped my ring. I'll get that in a minute because I don't want people to see my thinning bit on top. Vanity.
And so on that tremendous moment, I think we probably draw this thing to a close. Do you agree? Yes. All right then. Well, as is tradition then for us.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, Duggan.
Bye-bye.